Superhero movies showed us that remarkable abilities often come from life-altering events. But what if the real world worked the same way? A man wakes from a coma, suddenly speaking a language he barely understands. Another survives an electric shock and turns into a walking magnet. Science still stumbles to explain these astonishing transformations, but they're real. Could untapped superpowers be quietly sleeping inside all of us? Let's uncover 15 people who unlocked real-life abilities after a life-changing incident. And trust us, the number 8 will surprise you. Number 15. Nikolai Kryagliachenko. Nikolai was just 12, walking home from school in Russia when he leaned against a damaged power pole and electricity shot through his body. The jolt knocked him out cold. But when he came to, things were different. Metal started sticking to his skin. Coins, forks, pans, all clinging without glue or tricks. At first he thought it was static, but it didn't stop. Classmates watched in disbelief as metal objects latched to him like magnets. Some experts blamed body heat or oily skin. But Nikolai's case was unique. The effect started immediately after the electric shock. Even more bizarre, he claimed he could attract objects without touching them, like they responded to him. Scientists couldn't explain it. There was no evidence of implants or fakery, just an ordinary kid with a body acting like a magnet. Whether it's biological, electrical, or something science hasn't caught up with yet, his transformation remains one of the strangest on record. Number 14. Khan, Superhands, Trichan. Most people would scream in agony if splashed with boiling oil. But for Khan, a street vendor in Thailand, that wasn't the case. One afternoon, while frying chicken at his stall, he accidentally dunked his hand into a vat of bubbling oil. Instead of burns or panic, he calmly pulled his hand out, unscathed. At first, he thought it was a fluke. But as days went on, he realized he could dip his hands repeatedly into sizzling oil without injury. Word spread fast. Scientists and curious onlookers came to witness it. Despite temperatures exceeding 250 degrees Celsius, his skin remained unharmed. Experts speculated he had a rare skin composition, enhanced pain resistance, or perhaps unique glandular functions acting as a natural barrier. But none could fully explain it. Khan now demonstrates his ability to crowds, effortlessly pulling food from hot oil bare-handed. Whether it's biology or something else, his hands remain untouchable, even by science. Number 13. Gilles Tréhin. Gilles' mind holds an entire city, one that exists nowhere but inside his imagination. Born in 1972 in France and diagnosed with autism early on, Gilles showed signs of genius in both math and art. But it was architecture and design that truly captured him. At just 12, he began creating Urville, a fictional city so intricate it includes roads, neighborhoods, government structures, and even population statistics. Over the years, he designed every building and sketched hundreds of cityscapes that follow realistic architectural principles. His drawings include museums, railways, and functioning infrastructure that rival real-world blueprints. Gilles also wrote a book detailing Urville's history and layout, treating his mental creation with the seriousness of a real metropolis. What makes his case remarkable isn't just the volume of detail, it's the consistency and logic behind it. Urville isn't a dream. In his mind, it's fully alive, structured, and evolving. Number 12. Derek Amato. In 2006, Derek was just enjoying a pool party with good friends in Colorado when a split-second decision changed his life. He dove headfirst into the shallow end, smashing his head and suffering a serious concussion. He lost 35% of his hearing and began struggling with memory. But something else surfaced. Shortly after the accident, he sat at a friend's piano, and his fingers just moved. Complex melodies poured out, despite his never learning how to play. Somehow, his brain had been rewired. Doctors say the trauma may have activated dormant neural pathways linked to music, creating a rare condition where injury awakens previously untapped talent. Brain scans later showed unusual activity in his temporal and frontal lobes, areas connected to musical ability. Amato now works as a full-time musician, composing intricate piano pieces from memory. He never asked for it. It just came. And once it arrived, it never left. Number 11. Leslie Lemke. Late one night, May Lemke was awakened by music, complex, flawless, and coming from her adopted son, Leslie, who had never had a piano lesson in his life. Born in 1952 with cerebral palsy, glaucoma, and brain damage, Leslie was blind, struggled with movement, and didn't speak until his teens. Doctors said he'd never live independently, but at 16, after hearing a Tchaikovsky concerto on television just once, he played it back from memory, every note perfect. From that moment, Leslie's musical gift was undeniable. He could replicate any piece after one listen and improvise on command. Despite having an IQ of 58, his musical memory was exceptional. He performed around the world and inspired countless others. Actor Dustin Hoffman even studied him for his role in Rain Man. Though he faced lifelong challenges, Leslie's story remains one of the clearest cases of acquired savant syndrome, proof that genius can hide in the most unexpected minds, waiting for one moment to be heard. Number 10. Jason Paget. In 2002, Jason Paget was a chill furniture salesman in Tacoma, just another guy with a mullet and no real interest in math. Then came the attack. Outside a karaoke bar, two strangers ambushed him, slamming fists into his skull and leaving him unconscious in a pool of blood. But that blow didn't just damage, it rewired. When he came to, everything around him looked different. He began seeing geometric patterns, fractals, in everyday movement. Light, water, shadows, all broke into complex mathematical shapes his brain couldn't ignore. Despite no advanced schooling, he started sketching perfect diagrams of what he saw. Doctors were stunned. His brain scans lit up in regions tied to visual processing. He'd developed acquired savant syndrome, an ultra-rare shift where trauma flips a switch in the brain. He taught himself advanced mathematics and even wrote a book, Struck by Genius. Paget's life now revolves around numbers, not because he studied them, but because his mind became one. Number 9. Daniel Tammet. At 3 years old, Daniel experienced a life-threatening epileptic seizure, one that rewired his brain in ways no one could predict. After the incident, numbers took on an entirely new meaning for him. They weren't just digits anymore. To Daniel, each one had color, texture, and even emotion. He could feel them, see them, understand them in ways words can't express. When he performed calculations, he didn't process equations. He visualized entire landscapes. Diagnosed as a high-functioning autistic savant with synesthesia, Daniel once recited pi to 22,514 decimal places entirely from memory, an effort that took over 5 hours. But his brilliance isn't confined to math. He speaks more than 7 languages fluently and once learned Icelandic in under a week. Uniquely, he can describe how his mind works, something most savants can't do. He now writes and speaks publicly, giving researchers rare access into the mind of someone whose abilities were unlocked not by practice, but by pure neurological transformation. Number 8. John Sarkin. John was a chiropractor living a normal, structured life, until one routine adjustment shifted everything. After a procedure, he started experiencing severe ringing in his ears and visual distortions. Doctors discovered a brain hemorrhage had triggered a stroke. He survived surgery, but his brain didn't go back to how it was. Something had switched. He was suddenly overwhelmed by a drive to create art. Paintings, drawings, sketches. His hands wouldn't stop. Before the stroke, he'd barely touched a canvas. Now he was producing surreal, intricate works at a relentless pace. Neurologists believe the trauma rewired his frontal lobe, the region tied to creativity, unlocking a flood of artistic expression. He painted obsessively, describing it not as inspiration, but compulsion. Sarkin's pieces have since been displayed worldwide, his story a textbook example of acquired savant syndrome. While the stroke altered his motor skills and speech, it unearthed something he never expected: an unstoppable, vivid imagination that refuses to rest. Number 7. Nigel Ackland. Nigel lived a quiet life as a metalworker, until a workplace accident shattered his arm and set him on a course no one expected. After months of complications and surgeries, his arm was amputated. But Nigel didn't settle for a standard prosthetic. He was fitted with the Bionic 3, one of the most advanced bionic arms on the planet. Controlled by muscle signals in his upper arm, the prosthetic gave him back movement most never regained. And then some. He could type, grip, crack eggs, and even pour a drink with natural ease. More impressively, the hand responds in real time, offering precise control. Nigel went from struggling with basic tasks to operating technology that seemed pulled from science fiction. His transformation wasn't just physical, it changed how the world sees disability. With his bionic arm, Nigel became a symbol of how far tech has come in restoring human ability, and maybe even enhancing it beyond what nature allows. Number 6. Alonzo Clemens. Alonzo Clemens was just a toddler in the 1960s when a fall changed the course of his life. While chasing a toy truck, he struck his head hard against a table and suffered a severe brain injury. Doctors predicted lifelong cognitive challenges, and they were partly right. Alonzo struggled with reading, writing, and daily tasks. But out of those limitations came a gift no one expected. By age 5, he began sculpting animals from clay with uncanny precision. Without instruction, he could model perfect replicas from memory after seeing a creature just once. Muscle structure, posture, and proportions. He captured them all instinctively. Neurologists believe his condition triggered savant syndrome, enhancing his spatial and visual memory far beyond the norm. Though his intellectual ability remains limited, his artistic talent borders on superhuman. Alonzo's sculptures have since been featured in galleries worldwide. All right, guys, now let's talk about Number 5. Edward Muybridge. Back in 1860, Edward was just a young photographer riding a stagecoach across Texas until a brutal crash hurled him out, smashing his head and knocking him unconscious for days. That injury altered more than just his mood. After the accident, he began seeing things differently, like time itself was split into frames. The world no longer flowed in motion. It paused, stepped, froze. This odd perception turned into an obsession. Years later, in 1872, he designed a multi-camera setup to help Leland Stanford settle a bet about whether a horse's hooves ever left the ground during a gallop. The result? History's first motion capture. His invention laid the foundation for film, but that clarity came with a cost. His personality grew erratic, and some said unstable. Yet that injury opened a window no one else could see through. Without it, Muybridge might have stayed a regular photographer. Instead, he became the man who taught the world how to see motion. Number 4. The Rain Man twins. Florence and Catherine weren't shaped by a single accident, but by a neurological condition so rare it gave them extraordinary mental powers. Born prematurely in the 1950s, the twins were misdiagnosed as mentally disabled for much of their early life. In reality, they were living, breathing encyclopedias. From a young age, they displayed an uncanny ability to recall dates, events, and conversations with flawless precision. Ask them what day a random date in 1947 fell on, and they'll answer instantly. Their memories function like time-stamped archives, holding decades of personal experiences and historical trivia without error. Their talents came into public focus after a 1996 article, and in 2008, a documentary titled Twin Savants, Flo and Kay spotlighted their abilities. While their condition shares traits with savant syndrome, it's unique in its duality. Two identical minds wired the same way. Despite personal loss and daily challenges, the twins live independently, relying on brains that remember everything, even the moments most forgotten. Number 3. Tony Sikora. A flash split the sky, and in seconds, Dr. Tony Sikora's reality shifted forever. It was 1994. The New York orthopedic surgeon stood at a lakeside payphone, casually chatting with his mother. Without warning, a bolt of lightning struck the phone booth, tore through the line, and slammed directly into his head. His heart stopped. His body collapsed, smoke rising from the pavement. A nearby nurse sprinted over and brought him back with CPR. He pulled through, but he wasn't the same. Music had taken over his brain. Though he'd never touched a piano before, he couldn't stop hearing vivid, original piano pieces in his head. He taught himself to play, and within weeks, he was performing complex classical compositions from pure instinct. Neurologists believe the lightning jolt rewired his brain, triggering buried creativity. Sikora calls it a gift. What should have killed him instead awakened a passion and a talent that had been locked away all his life. Number 2. Ben McMahon. Back in 2012, Australian teen Ben McMahon was in a serious car crash that left him in a coma for over a week. When he woke up, everything changed, especially his voice. He began speaking fluent Mandarin Chinese, a language he'd only lightly studied in school. Even stranger? He struggled with English at first, as if his brain had flipped the language switch completely. Doctors were stunned. Ben had never shown fluency before. Neurologists believed the trauma activated parts of his subconscious memory or triggered neuroplastic changes in his brain. Some even linked his case to foreign language syndrome, a rare phenomenon where injury causes a shift in language dominance. Instead of fearing the change, Ben embraced it. He became a Mandarin-speaking tour guide, hosted Chinese TV shows, and even moved to Shanghai for studies. Though it defied logic, the transformation was real and permanent. One crash took him out of his native language, but somehow led him straight into a new one. Number 1. Franco Magnani. Franco nearly died from a violent fever, but when his body recovered, his brain returned sharper than ever. Living quietly in San Francisco, he hadn't seen his childhood village of Pontito in over 3 decades. But after the illness, he started vividly recalling his hometown with photographic clarity. He could visualize each narrow street, every stone wall and rooftop like he was standing right there. So he began painting them, but he'd never trained as an artist. Still, his paintings of Pontito looked eerily identical to real photographs, even down to the shadows on window frames. Neurologists suspect the fever triggered hypothymesia, a condition where memories are stored with good detail. Others believe it unlocked dormant functions in his brain, allowing him to recall and recreate lost moments with surreal precision. His mind became a living archive, rendering scenes no one expected him to remember, let alone recreate with such haunting accuracy. What do you think about him? Well, let us know. And if you've enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon.